if we had first become acquainted while I was working at the Georgia Mental Health Institute in Atlanta, Georgia, she would have been cataloged as 293.84, resulting from 311. Because that's what we did with human beings there. We had to enter a diagnosis from the DSM, and that's DSM speak for anxiety disorder resulting from depressive disorder. Luckily for her and for me, we were not acquainted at that time. I got to know her when I was already ordained a priest, and she came to me wanting help. She'd been to a psychiatrist. She'd been hospitalized 2 times. And she had anxiety attacks, and her psychiatrist told her, well, don't really have any pills, because this was several years ago, don't really have any pills that can deal with that, so don't really think there's much hope for you getting over it. Maybe you can learn to cope with it better. So she was at the end of her rope, and she turned to the church. Now, there are spiritual diagnoses, and I had one for her. It's a very simple one. Immaturity. It was immaturity. Now, if you met this woman at a party or at her place of work, you'd think, you're crazy. How could she be immature? A very high-functioning, brilliant woman. But it's not the immaturity in the way the world thinks. It's the immaturity that this gospel's talking about. Because this gospel says, John says through Jesus, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it will remain a single grain. It will not mature. But once it dies, abundant life happens. I think somebody else provides a really good exegesis on this. Oddly enough, a Sufi, Kabir Helminski, in writing in Living Presence, he says, Rumi says, only he who is an enemy to his own existence possesses real existence. This is not advice for the immature. Now I want you to hear that. This is not advice for the immature. Not until we can forego the impulses of the small, compulsive self will we be able to tap the infinite dimension of mind. Without dying, the soul cannot come to life. What you thought was yourself was an isolated fragment of your mind containing contradictory desires, conditionings, and obsessions. With awareness and love, this false self can dissolve like ice in sunlight. So what this woman and I started working on was maturity. She had been fractured so much that she was giving in to the lie of conditioning that was freely offered by those around her. You ever encountered that? People trying to condition you? Because, you know, I'll really like you if you'll be just like the person I want you to be. You know, there's people out there that put that pressure on. You get that pressure in systems. Churches can do that to you too. Workplaces can do that to you too. Do it to me. And am I going to be mature enough? In other words, live from my soul to be able to recognize those conditionings? And that's one of the things we worked on. And it takes a lot of courage for someone who's been hospitalized and receiving psychiatric care. It takes a lot of courage to begin the spiritual journey. You know, it takes a lot of courage for any person to begin the spiritual journey, because it is the journey of maturity. Let me unpack one more thing in this gospel. It's something that a junior chorister brought up on Wednesday evening. so I have to address it. He wanted an answer Wednesday evening. He sent it, you know, it's kind of like Andrew and Philip. He sent Stephen, the choir director, to ask me. And like Andrew, like Jesus, I didn't answer the Greeks that wanted to see. Let's see. Those who love their life lose it. And those who hate their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. He said, I love my life. Why would I want to lose it? And he's right. Why would I want to lose it? And hate is such a strong word that it's probably better to think of that in the Semitic terms from which it comes, meaning love less. Love less. What do I love in my life? Are the things that I love a result of the conditioning, a result of the compulsions I may have? If I love those things, I'm not free. More than likely, I'm going to be chained by fear, because if I step out of those conditionings, oh no, you're not going to like me. And that's where she was. And she began the journey to that essential self, which I liken to Christ. It's given to us, a wonderful gift, empowered in our baptism. She got to know that power. The conditioning melted away like ice in sunlight. Her fracturedness melted away like ice in sunlight. And as a result of her commitment to the spiritual path, her work on awareness, she was filled with something she hadn't experienced since probably about this big when the conditioning really starts. She experienced the confidence of being the person God created her to be. And she lived from that place. Kabir puts it this way. Submission is the lower self recognizing the essential self and acting on its guidance. It is overcoming the resistance offered by the lower self. It is to drop hesitations, doubts, fears, equivocations, rationalizations, resentments, and suspicions that keep us from expressing the great self, that keep us from being Christ in a world that desperately needs Christ.